The topic of the June 2019 teleconferences and study guides was Patrick Lecture 140, which is Negative Pleasure or Conflict as the Origin of Pain. I find it helpful when you can reduce some abstract concepts to formulas, and that is that negativity creates conflict and conflict creates pain. So pain is the message that conflict exists, and conflict is a message that there is a negative situation going on. Why does that automatically create conflict? Because the guide teaches that life is inherently a positive experience. You can't get rid of the positive. It's why we're here. So because we are inherently positive, any negativity in our lives, in our system, in our spiritual belief system, will begin to create conflict. It may create it slowly. It may take decades for a certain kind of conflict to rise to the point where it can be identified, where you can access the pain, where you can feel the pain, where you can begin to analyze and take it apart. It's kind of a backwards compliment that the negativity is so modest that it takes a long time for that to fester to the point where you can see it as an issue that really needs to be seriously addressed. In one of the meetings we had, someone said, "But I've done all this work." Well, as long as we're alive, we have work to do. It can be a great privilege to work on some of the finer points of our belief systems. It's not that we haven't done any work. We've done plenty of work along our lives. And as human beings, we're here to continually find negativity, address it, and transform it. So negativity creates conflict. Conflict creates pain. And so you can back it up to that, to find or to work on where there is a negative belief system. I always think of it like being drawn and quartered. There's some opposing belief despite the positive that you want. If there is conflict, there's an opposing belief. Now, some people say, "I'm fine. I have a positive belief system. I don't have a problem." It's the world that creates conflict. The world is here for our benefit. If the world creates conflict, then there's something negative happening in the world, and our observation of it and our interest in it are being drawn to it so that we're invested and involved, is because that conflict matters to us. If the conflict did not matter to us, we would observe it and say, "Gosh, I'm really sorry you're having a conflict. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know." But we're pulled into these conflicts because it may exist in us in a very small degree, where it may exist in others in a larger degree. Spiritual work is about respecting the small degree that you still have this negativity and to work on that part. So what I suggest as an exercise in the first portion is to consider any bothersome situation in your life as being a conflict, even if you don't identify it as a painful conflict. If it is a bothersome situation, then take a look at it and see if you can find the two different directions that you're being pulled in. What are the two options? What are the two choices? What are the two realities that are represented in this conflict? In the second week, we looked at what is negative pleasure actually. I'm having a hard time composing that sentence. Very often I talk about negative pleasure as starting with, "Oh, this is better than nothing." But that's not the actual definition of negative pleasure. Negative pleasure is indulging in negativity and enjoying the process. So it's not an innocent reality. It's an active involvement with a negative situation. Now, where innocence comes in is we may have told ourselves it's not that important, it's not that bad. The fact that we told ourselves that is part of our negativity. It's part of the cover-up. If you think of negative intentionality or negative pleasure as indulging in negativity and enjoying it, and then there's a resistance to giving up the negative pleasure. It can begin with, this is better than nothing, but there's an attachment that forms. And it is that attachment that we are unwilling to release, and that's why the negative pleasure stays in our life. The third week, we took a look at what the guide describes as a principle of self-perpetuating principle of insight and understanding, meaning that as you gain and develop insight and understanding, there is a perpetual motion machine that operates in you, that having insight and understanding inevitably creates more insight and understanding. And the opposite is true. An involvement with negative pleasure and a denial that it's negative and a wanting to and a refusal to see where that's a problem is going to lead in that direction. I boil this down to the ideas of physics, that you've got momentum and inertia. There's a force that moves you along, and that's a momentum. But once you're moving in that direction, there's an inertia, there's a reluctance or a resistance to changing or stopping that direction. So the self-perpetuation can be negative and it can be positive. But take a look at your own life and see examples of things that you don't like but you continue to participate in, or things about yourself that you don't like but you don't do anything about. So the principle of inertia is that once something is going in a certain direction, you've got to have another force to stop it, to slow it down, to change its direction. You can't just say, I don't like it. Something needs to be done about the consciousness that is already aimed in that direction, that is already engaging in activities in that way. So if you're sitting down and watching television or movies or reading books and you say, I need to become active, the idea is important. I need to become active. And then something has to be done. You've got to get up and do something, arrange activities, call a friend, whatever it is you need to do. There is, and this goes into the fourth week, the 4 stages of spiritual evolution. One is that we don't realize something needs to be done. That's called automatic reflex, and you can't really work there. But once you come into awareness, awareness itself can be very, very powerful. And you can stay stuck in awareness and claim that you're a victim. I have the awareness, but there's nothing I can do about it. The guide suggests that, yes, there is something you can do about it. You can simply say, I decide that I do not want to be in negativity. And then follow up and follow through. So you can make the decision. And then the question is, and what are we doing about it? Lack of awareness is what weakens you. So awareness, while it's painful because the awareness happens before we're obviously headed in the right direction. So awareness says, oh my goodness, I'm in the wrong place doing the wrong thing. And awareness is necessary for us to begin to look around saying, what other options are there? What are the alternatives? What can I do? How did I get in this mess? How is the self-perpetuating principle operating here to keep me doing this same thing? What are my habits? It is difficult to change habits. But once we recognize that they are habits, then we can begin to bring other forces to bear in changing them. So the 4 stages of spiritual evolution are automatic reflex, ignorance, true ignorance, awareness, and then understanding. It's a process back and forth, and then a knowing. While I usually list off the 4, it's important to understand that in the holistic understanding of that, awareness is knowing. There's a quality of being aware that says, I know. I know what I see. I don't know what it means yet, but I know what I see. In understanding, we can know that this is understanding. So the knowing exists throughout. And that's what makes the awareness so powerful. Is awareness is based upon, I know something's wrong. I know something has to be done. I know I don't like this. Is a very powerful statement because it then can help you marshal forces to create change. So, small summary of negative pleasure. The lecture is wonderful. I hope you read it. Thanks for listening.